Hello, good afternoon, everyone. And this is Marilyn for those who are new in our platform. And for those who will be watching us on a replay, good evening or good morning, wherever you are. Again, my name is Marilyn. I'm the founder and CEO of Customized Training Solutions Private Limited, or CTS. And we are passionate about helping leaders and organizations who are action takers and and continuous learners to transform and thrive in all aspects by co-creating customized programs with our world-class resources. We have served over 3,000 leaders from over 30 countries in different industries, including Petronas, Sony Mobile, PruLife UK, Ayala Group, Chevron, Tencent, Jollibee Foods Corporation, and Shell, to name a few. Experts say that the pandemic will last for the next 3 to 5 years, and this is why we are organizing several interventions, including this interview, to help leaders who don't know how to stay relevant and adapt into the next normal, those who find it stressful to lead and ensure performance of a remote team, and for those who are afraid that they cannot keep their team or their business. So do stay with us and join us in our interventions, including this interview. And for today, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you our leader. Sujata Tiwari has accumulated a wealth of experiences during her life, leading to insights and knowledge that cannot be coached or taught in a class. She has been a mother, wife, journalist, consultant, activist, leader, and businesswoman domestically and internationally. In sharing her story, Sujata strives to provide readers of all backgrounds in any parts of the world real life examples every on how to deal with unpredictable nature of everyday life. She is enhancing lives through mentoring and well-being, enhancing safeness as investigation protection surveillance consultant, and through brand protection as well as anti-counterfeiting, as well as she is enhancing businesses as project and performance consultant. So without so much further ado, I'd like to bring in Sujata. Hi, Sujata. I hope I'm
Hi,
pronouncing your name
Marilyn.
correctly.
Of course.
That's
It,
great.
it,
That's great.
it's
It's
wonderful
nice.
to be with you.
Yes, it's my pleasure to have you, and I'm glad to finally see you today, even if it's online or virtually. And so, yeah, I wanted our audience to get as much value from you. So we will go jump right into the question. So basically, the way I ask my question, the first three would be a lot around understanding from which perspective you are coming from. The 4 to 6 question would be, I would say, the meaty or juicy part of the conversation. And the last two questions are actually, I would always call this as my Miss Universe questions. This is a very interesting and open questions, I would say, that I asked in this conversation that I believe will be a great learning piece for our audience or listeners. So anyway, to jump right into the question, so the first is basically we would want to have a better understanding of your leadership experiences, and as well as probably your leadership influencers, or if you have a favorite leadership lifestyle, I mean style that you'd like to share with us, feel free to do so.
Okay. So, first of all, your questions are very good. I must say this because to take out the essence of leaders is something which is an art itself. Why I say that is because as a writer, as a journalist, as an author, I always have, in my focus area, been very interested in leaders beyond their designations, beyond the suit and
Mhm.
tie. You know what I mean? And to
True.
draw out that, because that is what is actually will tell you what the leadership is all about. So
Mhm.
I my style of leadership, and which I think works because I've seen people do that, is hands on. You have
Mhm.
to be a hands-on leader. I mean, you if you are not going to walk the talk, and you're not going to show by example or lead by example, as they say, then there are going to be a lot of slip ups, and it will not have the kind of success that you want in either growing an organization, or even let alone in growing an individual. What we forget most of the time, it's not only about organization, it's about the people in the organizations which make the organization, right? So the success depends on whether you grow people, and that you can do if you have a hands-on style, at least according to me. And in my experience, which is there in my book, you see, there are so many examples that you would run out of time, and I would have such a long list that it would not finish. So I have seen, at any given time, when I've had experiences of challenging situations or moments, I have seen various people how they rise to the occasion. And that is what I have learned from, because I always say that we can learn from others. It's not necessary you have to learn from your seniors. You can learn from your co-workers. You can learn from subordinates also, because they too may have leadership qualities which we often overlook. So who influenced me? No, that if I have to take names, then I will actually start with my parents, because as you know you if you dig a little further, I will come to it. But it's like when I observe people, how they operate in life altering moments. That is
Mhm.
what leadership is all about.
Are you done, Sujata? Sorry, you cut up for a
Done.
bit. Oh, okay,
No, no,
sure. Okay, thank you so much for sharing with us your experience as a leader. And I'm glad you've actually shared something personal, which is like what you've mentioned. You were influenced by parents. And this is why, as a parent, we are also are a leader, and we need to be an example. We need to be a role model for our children. And it's
exactly. And all the parenting that the mothers do are never, never acknowledged. They are never given that due respect. If you can manage a family, I think any woman or any husband or any person can manage anything in the world.
true, true. Especially if you have a lot of children that you have to,
Yeah,
like
children,
what you mentioned,
it's and
when
it's
you
all kinds
did.
of people.
Hmm. Yeah,
It's not.
and sorry.
Yeah. No, you go ahead.
Yeah.
You was
So like what you've said earlier, right? It's about leading people or human beings, right? And again, like what I've said, especially if you have like several children or a lot of children, because these are different personalities, and it is the same way when you work in organizations. People have different perspectives, people have different beliefs, and they have different attitudes or values and characters that that they go by when they work. And again, like what you've said, it's about leading by example and walking the talk when you actually like help your employees or your people, including even your children as a parent, right? So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And so you've mentioned a few, I guess I would say that a definition of the leadership. But if you were to like if you were to highlight to us like what is leadership for you, what would it be?
very simple. So I must tell you, or you must tell the audience to read my book. You know
Mm-hmm.
why? Because everything is in there. So, what
Mm-hmm.
is leadership, which I say in all my motivational speeches and in webinars on leadership, is this: leadership is not about designation, it's about action. And the action that you take at the most critical juncture of anything, okay, that is what leadership is about. Because sometimes you may need to take some very hard hitting decisions, okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something where you're going to gain a popularity contest, or you're
Mm-hmm.
going to win accolades or medals or something. This is where you need to take a decision, and that decision, if you can take, despite knowing that you may not be very popular, or despite knowing that maybe it may not be successful, but it is the need of the hour. That is what is leadership is all about. So when we have any kind of a challenging situation, how we respond to it is our choice. And That choice will determine whether we are leaders or not.
Wow, that's really beautiful, and thank you for sharing and or simplifying that for us, right? And again, like, cause in the past, we've been hearing a lot. Oh, I have the power. I am the leader. I am the boss here, and all those stuff. But gone are the days where you only consider your designation or your position in your company, right? As the to be called as a leader in your organization, right? And so that brings me as well into in during the introduction I've made mention as well about next normal and how difficult it has been, because that's another, I would say, challenge that leaders has to face, that they have to lead teams from a remote or a virtual or even a hybrid nowadays type of working conditions with their team, right? And you've mentioned about how you define leadership is really about how you can actually take actions or make decisions in this critical situation. So I just wanted to find out, then how would you actually define or describe the next normal, if based on your understanding?
So, look, I'll give you a very broad spectrum. We don't choose where we are going to be born, do we? We don't choose, right? Our settings, we don't choose whether we are going to be born rich, poor, which country, where, right? Similarly, we didn't ask for, say, what everybody's talking about, the pandemic or the COVID. We didn't ask for it. So did we prepare for it? It's not something like, okay, you're preparing for war or for famine or this thing where you can collect data and all. These things happen in life. So how you respond to it and how you deal with it, that is what is all leadership is all about. It's about the new normal. Now we
Mm-hmm.
don't like what is happening, but we have to adapt. So adaptation is the key. We have to adapt whether we like it or not, and then we have to be disciplined. For example, in this new normal, everything is about virtual. But what I see in a lot of corporate companies, and even when everything is on Zoom, doctors are on Zoom, lawyers are on Zoom, everybody's on Zoom or something or the other. What I see, which is actually a stumbling block, is that it is the time management of scheduling. You are in different parts of the world, and you have to get your timings right. You have to get your perspectives of dealing with people from different cultures, different countries, right? Every country is different, so when you're managing those portfolios, you have to be mindful of what the situation is there. You can't just have a call and say, okay, you have to be here, and this thing in that country, what's happening now, it is of importance. Maybe when it was normal times, you may not have been be bothered about what your employees are going through, if there is a bereavement in the family or something. But now COVID has taught us that you better value life and you better value every moment. So there should be a right to disconnect. For example, if you know that certain people, it's their night time or something, schedule meetings where it's like a win-win for everybody. If you're going to make your employees to get up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., just because you are the head of the organization, or you are the bosses, it doesn't work. That then we shall next be talking of mental health and well-being, right? Because they are going to have a burnout, which is very evident from what I see everywhere. So that right to disconnect and the right to uh, for people to be mindful and for people to be understanding is what I think COVID has taught us. Or if we don't learn the lesson, then we are going to face problems. So the new normal is that where you adapt to the situation and you are mindful of what happens, because you can't predict anything now. You can't just predict anything, right?
Yeah, true. And we've actually, in a lot of the conversations I had, although most of them wouldn't want to dare like define or describe next normal, but again, it's like what I've always hear from like the leaders that I interview. It's all about adapting, and again, like what you've mentioned, having that virtual ways of connecting with your employees, and most importantly, not only taking care of performance and all those stuff, but also like
Exactly.
what's happening, the well-being of of your team, as well as having empathy incorporated in how you operate in your organization, right? And
Yes.
that's really like one of the silver linings that was brought about by COVID-19, I would say, right? And so thank you for reminding us of that. And so, we've been talking about the challenges that this next normal or the COVID-19 has brought us in the last 2 years. But for sure, in the past, like from probably your experience as a corporate leader or working with corporate leaders or individuals, um, they already have like some common problems that they face, right? So what would you say would be the top three problems that leaders normally face?
I think top three problems I would identify is one of the things which I've seen all through my life is having, to decide between the right fit for the profile versus performance.
Mm-hmm.
There are times when the companies would, remove people just because they're not performance based.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have your targets and you have your performance based results, and based on that you are, promoted or retained in the company.
Mm-hmm.
And is a challenging thing, which I think a lot of companies make mistake and let go of the talent, because at the end of the day, then in the number game you may go up and down in the number game, but remember, it can never substitute for the talent that you might retain, even though it might be difficult at times. But having the right talent is very important, because in the long run it's like penny wise pound foolish. You might keep a mediocre person and let go of somebody who's actually a value or an asset to the company, and that doesn't do good in the long run. Let me tell you this. So that is one. You said top three. The other
Top.
is having an open communication. If you are a leader, or if you are in the top management, you have to be accessible to the people down below. If you want to know what's happening inside your organization, have an open door policy, because you will then really know the pulse of your company. Otherwise, there'll be so much of politics that one day it'll land up at your doorstep, and you would have to do a lot of sweeping, to get rid of it. So that is number two. Number three is what I would say is, again, it's maybe a little repetitive, but I think we should always focus on the human aspect. If we don't give the due weightage to human beings and give it more to technology and other aspects, that is not a good thing, as per me. I mean, for me, I feel that you have to technology was created by human beings, but we now act as if, technology is our boss, right? We run after technology and we forget to be human and kind. These things are not taught to us, but these things are very important. Having a heart and soul is important. And I know that some people might think that, when I speak like this, I'm speaking because I'm a woman, and so that's why. But that's not true. I have seen a lot of men also who are nurturing and kind. So without any gender bias, I feel that it's important that we never lose perspective of our values, which is the human beings. Technology cannot replace the human aspect.
Wow, I love what you've just shared with us in terms of, having into consideration always the human aspects, when you're
And
working with.
always the human aspect.
Yeah, and again, this is the reason why like a lot of changes
Bump,
or
bump.
um, technological digitalization and all those stuff are having some issues sometimes, right? Because they sometimes forget to
Because
take into consideration the about the human or the people
sometimes
who's actually going to use it, right? Yeah,
yeah,
so
because if you look at it, like so much focus on technology, right? But what is happening in COVID times, we never discuss how many people have lost their jobs, how many people are, so depressed or impacted, how much poverty is happening, what violence is happening. The suicides are happening. We never talk about that, but we're always having lots and lots of platforms where we discuss the next new technology. There's so much of focus on technology and going, outside our planet. First, we should solve our planet problems, right? Then go outside.
Yeah, that's very true. And that leads me to my next question. I mean, we've talked about the top three problems that most leaders would face according to you. And of course, we will not leave them with these problems, and we will try to give them some solutions as well. So, which relates to the next question that, there are, of course, important leadership capabilities, skills, or values that, they must have in order to lead effectively or to continue to lead effectively in the next normal. So, what would you say would be your top three as well in terms of important leadership capabilities and skills? Having said that,
I mean, capabilities and skills are people management. See, it always comes down to people management. It always comes down to resources, how
hmm
effectively you use the resources, but never at the expense of the human capital, is what I would say. So, your capabilities and skills should be to look at things in a new manner. You have been following something over a period of time in a certain manner, but now when you have to adapt, it's very important to understand how to adapt to a new situation. So your capabilities and skills should be training your people as a leader have to also think out of the box for a change. And whatever you have learned has to be probably put aside, because this is not something that you envisaged, right? But now you have to deal with it. So you have to also start. I mean, you have to dirty your hands in order to lead. As I always say, that it's hands on. So if you have a new normal and you have a new this thing, then you have to also retrain yourself and you know remodel yourself with different skill sets and different ways of operating, right? You can't be operating at the same methods that you used earlier.
Tiwari, are you still there?
Are you there?
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's been like cutting off a bit. So
Yeah.
you've talked about people management, and then the second one is retraining, reinventing yourself,
Yes, retrain. Yes.
and
And so you
the third
have was how to effectively use your resources. Resource management will also become key. It'll not be managed the way it was before, but you'll have to think of creative ways of managing your resources.
one. Thank you so much for summarizing that really well for us. And let me just put in the summary to share. Okay. And so, thank you so much. I mean, you've mentioned about people management, which we have been like from the start talking about. I mean, it's important for them to remember that they're working with humans, and again, humans are not only interconnected but could be complex at times. And I love the second part where you mentioned they have to retrain. And as a leader, great leaders are continuous learners as well, right? And when things happen like what we're facing right now during the pandemic, it just makes sense to be able to reimagine, reinvent, and to make changes, right? Or to adapt and embrace the changes. And again, it's all about like what you said, managing effectively whatever resources you have, whether it's people or like assets that you have, right? Or like maximizing it in any way, right? And since we've actually spoke about retraining or continuous learning, so what do you believe will be the role of learning, leadership, and transformation in order to thrive in the next normal?
See, if you are continuously evolving, then the transformation will happen accordingly. If you stop and do not reimagine yourself, the transformation will not happen. You can either do something about it, or you need not to do something about it. The choice is yours, so you have
Mm-hmm.
to make the choice. And for that, you will really have to, you know uh, do things which you have probably never done before. For example, it's very hard to change mindsets, right? But
Mm-hmm.
now people have to change their mindsets. They have to do things which they've probably never done before. That, the corporate world has always talked of risk taking, but do they actually do a lot of risk taking? Now you'll have to really do risk taking. You may not know how to swim, but if you are thrown into the water, you will have to learn to swim, right? Or at least you'll have to be prepared that if I'm going to be thrown into the water, I better have all the floating devices, or the safety devices, so that if I'm thrown, then I'm better prepared. So you have to think ahead of what could happen and be a little prepared. At the end of the day, no matter how much you prepare, you might still land up in a situation for which you are totally unprepared. So that is something which I think we have to keep in mind going forward. Then
Wow.
only we transform.
Yeah, that's amazing. And again, just to repeat what you just said, it's really about evolving or embracing to change, retrain, relearn, right? And that's when transformation happens. What I love about what you've said is the choice is yours. So it's mainly, I've actually mentioned in an interview I had in UNTV in a talk in a news morning news last February, and I mentioned to them that it's all about choosing your heart. I mean, like, not having a job is hard, but working in a new environment, working in a new thing, or embarking in a new business perhaps is also hard. But it's all about choosing your heart, right?
Yes, and you might be very successful in doing your own thing. You've been an
Exactly.
employee for 20 years, but now what if you suddenly start your own? You don't know what is lying beneath, which is untapped.
Yes, and that's amazing, right? I'm not so sure if this is a comment or these are just spamming. I see some names here, Stephen Gardner, and the other one I cannot read. I cannot read it, but just acknowledging those who are actually currently watching us. Thank you so much for joining us. Feel free to to give us a comment or ask your questions if you have any, as we might be able to add in that during the conversation. And so thank you so much again for that answer, and I really love this conversation, and this is really an amazing interview for a start of the year. And so that excites me to ask you the last two questions now, um, which are very open question, like I've mentioned earlier. So if you have a magic wand and can use it, what will you do with it?
Wow. I love this question. I wish somebody would ask me this. I always kept hoping somebody ask me this question. And finally, you asked me this question. If I had a magic wand, I would actually just wish that everybody on this planet became kinder to each other, because we don't teach people to be kind. We talk about kindness, we talk about gratitude. But I always say, actions speak louder than words. Show me that kindness, show me that gratitude. And that is something which people don't do. If you ask me to give examples, I can tell you so many examples, and for which I'm always grateful. When people have gone that extra mile to help somebody, you don't have to give to charity. Look around you. Somebody has lost their job, somebody needs some help with a medical bill. Do you do that for a neighbor or for a friend? How many do that? I have unfortunately seen, when you are in a desperate situation, and if people say, oh, how are you, for example, and if you automatically say, oh, I'm fine, right? Even if you're not fine, you say, I'm fine. But what if you say that I'm not fine, and what if you say that I need some help? I have tried this as an experiment, and I can tell you most people just disappeared. That was the end of it. They just went into the silence. And as I say, silence can be golden or silence can be deafening. So I get the message. So, it's not enough to say, I love you. It is, you have to show it. Like if you're a mother, right? I'll make it very simple. And I think you'll like this answer. If you're as a mother, your child is hungry and wants food and is crying because the child is hungry. And if you just give a hug and tell the child, "Oh, I love you so much," is the child going to, stop crying? Because the need for the child at that moment is action of that love by you feeding that child. If you can't feed the child, what happens? So, that is what I'm saying, that there are so many people who are being forced to give up their children, and who are in all kinds of situations all across the globe. How much do we think about it when we have festivities going on? Do we actually sit and think of the meal that we are having, that somewhere or most places out there people don't have that kind of a food? I mean, okay, we can't stop living, but do we spare a thought? My question is, do we spare a thought? I at least do. There are times when, if I hear something bad happening, I can't eat that day. That's what I meant. So if I had a magic wand, I'd just put the magic wand and say, everybody just become more kind, and just see the transformation the world would have.
Wow, that's really lovely. I really love how you've actually like used your wand, and I really hope that you have one or I can lend you one. But again, I mean, with what you do, at least it's also encouraging more businesses, more leaders, more people to actually live their full potential as well, right? And enhancing their lives as well. And when you enhance somebody else's life, then that encourages as well kindness, not only coming from you, but it's a ripple effect at the end of the day, right?
Yes.
So that makes it beautiful. Sometimes I would watch some inspiring videos about kindness, and that it's everywhere in the world. We can see it everywhere in the world. Sometimes we just focus too much on the negativity and the bad things that happens, and that's the reason why I'm sorry I don't wear I don't really like watching news, and I'm specific with the things that I feed my mind and as well. I really like particularly choose on the things that I will read and look into or listen into. So and we again, like what you've said earlier, we do have a choice. It's our choice, right?
Yes. And I'd like to actually give you a quote here, which is one of my favorite quote.
Hmm.
The bad doesn't happen because of the bad people. It happens because of the silence of the good people.
Wow, that's really the bad does not happen because of
Of
the
the
bad
bad people,
people.
but it happens because of the silence of the good people. There would be few people who are doing bad things, but the silent majority of people who just silently watch, observe, and don't do anything about it. That's why the bad keeps perpetrating again and again. But if we all stood up and said no, that this is not allowed, just think, the
That's really. Mhm.
huge population of nameless, faceless people which we are a part of. We don't always, we read the news, some negativity happens, we read it, we may discuss it in our drawing rooms, and that's the end of it. Do we actually do something about it?
Yeah, and again, like from what I hearing from you and learning from you in this conversation, and it's all about the actions or doing, right? And it's what really gives like a lot of impact in um the everything, in everything that we do, right? And again, like, the reason why, even if I wasn't comfortable doing what I'm doing right now in this interview, before I started, or when I am starting, I said, like, I know that at some point, or one point in the conversation, or interviews that I would do, is that it's really like what you've said, it's really, getting rid of that silence and hoping to inspire more people through the message that we have, for them, right? Through this interview, people get reminded, get inspired, and get the awareness. I mean, it all starts with awareness, after all, right? Through this kind of conversations, and at least something that, they would learn from and get inspired from, hopefully. At least there are some good things that are, that they can listen to, they can watch to.
Yeah, it's like this when we talk of inspiration. If you go to the sea or the river, you can't do anything to change the course of the sea or the river, or can you do anything with it? No. But you can always take a bucket of water from the sea or the river and carry it home. So
Yeah.
that is what I'm trying to say. Even if one person is impacted or inspired by others' experiences, that
Mhm.
is your job done.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that inspiring message. And so that leads me now to my last question to you, which is also a very open question, I would say. If you were to ask yourself a question that you can best answer, what would it be? And, if you'd like to share with us your answer, or why you actually came up with that, feel free to do so.
That's a very actually open question, but a very tough one, because for the thinkers, and especially I'm a thinker, I would say, I keep thinking all the time. And the question that I would ask myself, that even though I'm everybody's 2 a.m., 4 a.m. friend, am I doing enough or am I overdoing it? For a simple reason, what I am coming to a conclusion is, while I'm there all the time for people, if people don't appreciate other people's time, then am I doing the right thing by putting myself out there for people who don't appreciate? Then that means I need to choose wisely the company that I keep, or the people that I can make a difference to. It's no use if you spread yourself, like this, so thinly that nobody gets anything. And I just put myself out there. So then I have to ask myself, because when I give my time to others, what people should appreciate and realize is, in that time I could be doing so many other things for myself, couldn't I could be doing things where I would grow, where I would do this thing. But if I'm spreading myself out for humanity, for for being human to other people and being there for them all the time, then that should be in some form be reciprocated, at least by honoring the time that I give them. Whether you So I always say this, that just loving is not enough. Respect is very important. And that's a lesson. If I keep learning, then somewhere it tells me, am I not learning it right? Because if the same lessons come up, that means somewhere there is a disconnect, or that I'm giving away too much. Because one day I will have nothing to give. I'll not have
Wow.
anything for myself either.
Right, right. And that's actually a hard lesson I have learned recently. Um, Sometimes we forget to, like, to have self-care or self-love, right? And we always wanted to help others, even we are not appreciated, like what you've said. And that goes for both life and business, I would say, right?
Yes.
So now it's really about choosing, like, who you would want to work with, or who you would actually, like, spend your time with most, right? Because if we don't have that boundaries, and again, we talk about boundaries again, now that, you've mentioned that again, I mean, earlier, when we say that, people are working remotely, and, like, some leaders are, like, expecting to have meetings at a very odd time or whatnot, especially on a global type of business. So it's again, like I would say, like what I hear from you is not only like being discriminative of the things that we can control and we cannot control, being discriminating of like who should we work with and we should we should not work with, and being able to really like identifying when we're doing enough or not, or like what you said, overdoing it already, like setting that boundaries throughout our life or to different aspects of our lives, right?
It's,
So
it's about you, people promoting others, and it's also about you being appreciated. There's no right and wrong about it, but if
mhm,
it, you can't just say, oh, you do things without any expectations. Of course
mhm,
you need expectations. If that was not true, then why do we have schools and colleges which give you grades and give you marks, and then why do you have in the corporate world all kinds of awards? Don't have that system at all, right? But we, since we have that system, you need to appreciate the good, and you need to accept that when bad happens you have to stand up and say no. It's maybe two sides of the same coin, but that is very, very important, I feel.
yes. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate your very, I would say, very practical and authentic answers in this conversation. And I really love how inspiring and motivating it is at the same time. And how it sounded so simple, I would say. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you, and for the learning as well that you imparted to us. And thank you everyone for joining us or for watching us today. So again, I would like to invite everyone to join us in this journey to create opportunity through several interventions that we would create for you, and let's all help each other to create the world we believe in and we wanted to live in, right? And remember, even the richest investors in this world say that investing in yourself is the best investment you can ever make, or you can ever make in your life. So do connect with us if you have any questions, you need help, especially around leadership, organizational development. And with that, we would like to leave you with this quote from Dolly Parton, that if your actions create a legacy that inspires others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are an excellent leader. Thank you so much, Sujata, and thank you so much everyone who actually joined us or will be watching us on the replay later on. Thank you. Bye for
Thank
now, and
you.
happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year also. Thank you.